To me, this is one of the most important sichas in Sichot Haran. And despite the fact that many mashpiyim, many transmitters of the Torah, Rabbi Nachman, they focus specifically on the concept of hodu, of thank you, of gratitude. This cannot deny the fact that Rabbi Nachman spoke a lot more about screaming and crying to Hashem like a child does to his father. And this sicha is the source. This conversation that Rabbi Nachman had with his students was to encourage this practice, and not as a one only in a time of trouble, and not only when you're desperate, for sure then, but that this is the first move. You know, in basketball, a person has a go-to move. So Rabbi Nachman is trying to encourage us, to educate us, to makadesh us, that this should be our go-to move. So with that hakdama, with that introduction, let's go straight into this very, very beautiful, very empowering, very important sicha of Rabbi Nachman ben Fega. The Rebbe says like this: it's very good to pour your thoughts out before Hashem like a child is pleading before his Abba, before his father. Hashem calls us his children. Like the Pasuk says in Devarim, you are children to Hashem your God. Rabbi Nachman is already setting the tone for this sicha, and he's explaining to us what is our primary relationship with God. Are we servants? Are we strangers? We're children. Hashem's your dad. Hashem's my dad. Hashem's your mom. Hashem's my mom. And no matter how old you get, your parents are always your parents. And you're always the child to your parents. And Hashem, despite the fact that He runs the world, that He's the orchestrator of reality, that He's pulling all the strings and He's making all of the moves, you're His child. I'm His child. And that's our relationship with Him. That's our primary relationship with Him. And that's why the Torah says you are His children. It's not poetic. It's not something to make you feel good about yourself. It's because literally just like your children are your children and they're always your children, so too we are Hashem's children. Therefore, it's good to express your thoughts and troubles to Hashem like a child complaining and pestering his father. This is not something which is so popular. This is not something which is so encouraged, for sure not in the normative Jewish world, and even in the world of Breslov, where you get different teachings from different mashpiyim. The concept of complaining or pestering or arguing is something which is not encouraged, or it's something which is stuffed down. But this goes against what our teacher taught us. This goes against what Rabbi Nachman encouraged and emphasized much more than the concept of silence. And that is to fight for what you want. That you come to Hashem like a child is coming to his father, and just like when a child wants something, candy, and you say no, so what does he do? He cries. And then you think to yourself, oh, but this is not really good for him. He doesn't really know that. But the child's a child. And all he continues to do is to make the case. If you give me this piece of candy, I'm going to be good. Da 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 da. Crying more and more and more until finally the Abba has compassion for the son and gives him the candy. And Rabbi Nachman says the whole reason that we have children to do this for us is to remind us of what we need to be doing with Hashem. Not to think because something in your life is not going a certain way that you should just be modeh, that you should say, okay, this is how it is. There's no reason for me to do anything besides thank you. In Olam Haba, you'll say thank you for everything. Sometimes you have to say thank you here. But just as much as you say thank you, you also have to cry and scream to Hashem. Because this is our relationship with God. A servant says thank you, but a child begs and pleads. And Hashem says, you are my children. I remember when I was trying to go to Uman this past Rosh Hashanah. I just got to Israel, and I didn't realize that I needed a passport in order to get to Uman from Israel, an Israeli passport. I hadn't gotten one yet. And I bought the tickets for Uman, got the apartment for Uman, thought everything was set. And I've been praying for 2 years to get to Uman for Rosh Hashanah because I wasn't able to go the year before because of COVID. It was something I was looking forward to for a very long time, and I've been praying and crying for a very long time. And then finally, my wife texts me and she says, David, I think that you need a passport. And I said, no, it's fine. We just moved to Israel. I have my American passport. It's like if I was visiting here, they wouldn't stop me from going to Uman. So I asked somebody, I actually asked Rav Chaim Kramer's son. And he said, yeah, you need one. And all of a sudden my face went white. Because if you don't know, but in the country of Israel, it's not like America where things move necessarily so quickly in the realm of administration. Maybe if you're American, you don't think it moves so quickly. But when you come to Israel, then you realize it moves very quickly. And here, things take a long time to get done. So my wife set me up with an appointment to go to the embassy. So I went to the embassy, and now it's like a week before I'm supposed to go to Uman. And my students who have already been praying and crying for 2 years to go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah are excited to go with their teacher, me, and that we should be together as best friends to go see the Rabbi who has been giving us life and joy and hope for the past, however long that we've known his teachings, that we've been following his advice. It was like a culmination of sorts that I was really, really looking forward to. And I thought would be an unbelievable experience, something life-changing for everyone, and myself included. And when I got to the embassy, they told me that I can't come in, that I need to have this certain paperwork. If I don't have this certain paperwork, I can't come in. And I started to beg them, please let me in, please, I need this, da. He said, I don't speak English, don't bother me. And then everyone around saw me, trying to advocate and make my case. And they had rachamim for me, they had empathy for me. So they came over and they started to ask me in English what I was trying to convey to him. So I started to tell, and then they start to tell this guard in the front of the embassy what I'm looking to try to do, why I'm trying to go, and why I don't have these papers. It's not my fault, X, Y, and Z. He said, you don't have an appointment here, you can't come here, you need to make an appointment very far in advance for something like this, you don't have one. And they were literally standing with him for minutes, trying to make the case. And nothing happened. And I was so heartbroken. And I texted my wife and I told her, they're not letting me in. I'm not able to get the passport. And I'm starting to think about my students. Oh my gosh, they're traveling to Ukraine, to this crazy country, to be in this barren city, which is only alive once a year, with thousands and thousands and thousands of people there. That my students have been working so hard, learning these teachings and bringing these teachings into their life, and on the path towards doing that, having to rise above much opposition and insults and vilification of others. and to go against the grain and go against what the secular world deems as important or valuable or normal. And they were so looking forward to me being there, and I was too. And that's one side, and then the other side is I'm a student of Rabbi Nachman. I'm a chassid. I love him. I have awe of him. I believe in him. I trust him. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be alive. And I'm not just saying that figuratively. He has not just brought me back to life and resurrected me, but instead of just surviving, I'm really living now, for half a decade. And more as time goes on, no matter what goes on, no matter what struggles and difficulties I go through, the life of Rabbi Nachman, Chayim Haran, is constantly infusing me and lifting me back up and helping me to start over again and to try to give whatever Hashem gives me to others, to my family, to my kids, to you. I started crying in the car, and I said, Hashem, you need to fight for me. And I started crying, and I said, I fight for you. I'm fighting for you all the time, every day, even though I struggle, even though I suffer, even though I have a very hard time with my mental health, even though I have a very hard time with my physical health, even though I've taken a path that's very less traveled. I'm fighting for you every day. Fight for me. And I start screaming, fight for me. And tears are streaming down my face. I'm fighting for you. You have to fight for me. And I finally look back at my phone and I see that my wife texted me, David, don't leave the embassy. My father contacted somebody who works in the government of Israel, and they're contacting the embassy right now to get you to come in. And I couldn't believe it. Hashem literally answered me on the spot. And anyone who's from Israel knows it was mamash nes. It was a miracle. And I went in there and I waited for hours, and finally they let me in. It took 5 seconds, and they gave me a piece of paper and they said, you're good to go to Uman. How did I get to go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah, which Rabbi Nachman says is the highest, greatest thing of all? That if a person goes to Uman for Rosh Hashanah, he could be happy for the whole year. This is an impact on him, not only on his life while he's here, but on his children's life, and his grandchildren's life. They could find out the root of his soul, his mission in this world. Tzion Breslov started because of my first trip to Uman. Everything since then is also coming from that moment, that one day, that seed that gives birth to everything. And it came b'davka because I didn't just say thank you, but I screamed and I cried like a child to his father, begging him and pleading him until he gave me what I want. And I didn't do it because I'm crazy, and I didn't do it because I'm chutzpahdik. I did it because my Rabbi told me to. That my Rabbi told me I'm his son, and that this is what a normal son does with his father. He pleads his case, and he cries, and he screams until he gets what he wants. And this is our relationship with Hashem, because we really are his children. And Rabbi Nachman says, you may think you have done so much wrong that you're no longer one of Hashem's children. But remember that Hashem still calls you his child. Because it says in the Gemara, in the Masech Kedushin, Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, for good or for bad, you're always called his children. Hashem's love for us is not conditional, and no matter what we've experienced in our own families or in our own relationships, Hashem's love for us is not based on a condition. It's not based on us doing something good. He likes when we do something good. It gives him nachat when we do something good. Makes him happy that we're actualizing our potential in this world, for sure. But it doesn't determine your status as a child. You don't become or not become a child because you do good or you don't do good, because you made the right decision or you made the wrong decision. You're his child because Hashem created you as his child, because he loves you with an infinite love, and it's not based on circumstances or conditions or even actions or emotions or thoughts. You are forever his child, for good or for bad. Now Rabbi Nachman says, let us even assume, chas v'chalila, let's assume for a second that Hashem actually has dismissed you from being his child. He really has relegated you to another status. You're no longer considered his child, chas v'shalom. Rabbi Nachman says, still, you have to say, let him do as he wills. Let Hashem do like he wants. But I still have to do my part and act like his child. It's an unbelievable thing. It's okay, fine. Let's say you really did horrifying things. You made tremendous mistakes. You broke so much. You've destroyed so much. And it really feels like Hashem has casted you aside. You're no longer his child. That's Hashem's part. But me, I have to still act like I am. I have to keep knocking on the door every single day, screaming and crying and begging and advocating and pleading to be let back in, because I am still his child, even if Hashem has made it like I'm not, because Hashem told us in the Torah that we're his children. And the sages say, for good or for bad, always, always. Rabbi Nachman says how very good it is when you can awaken your heart and plead until tears stream from your eyes, and you stand like a little child crying before his father. I can't tell you how many times I've done this. And it's an unbelievable thing how I just did this for an hour and a half before I picked up the book and said, you know what? I have to teach another class. People need this. And I opened up to the 7th Sichot, and literally I was just doing this, crying and screaming in my car that Hashem should help me. Pleading like a little child before his father, with tears streaming down my face. And then I come in and I have this inspiration. And Rabbi Nachman says, whenever you have an inspiration to do something good, don't wait. You have an inspiration to go learn, just go start learning. You have an inspiration to do a mitzvah, just go do it. You have an inspiration to start talking to Hashem, do it right now. Rabbi Nachman was known for, as soon as he had some type of inspiration for something good, he would instantaneously do it and put everything else on the side. He would never think, I'm going to put this off until tomorrow, I'm going to do this in a week. And the reason Rabbi Nachman explains is because that inspiration is coming from heaven. It's heaven sent. And therefore tomorrow it won't be there. It's only there right now. And the reason it's there right now is because Hashem wants you to do that right now. To put everything else aside and do that right now. And I open up Sichot Haran to the Sichot that we're on right now. And it's talking about crying and pleading before Hashem like a son before his father. My grandfather, Rav Nachman Hordenker. So Rabbi Nachman's grandfather, one of the main students of the Baal Shem Tov, who married the Baal Shem Tov's daughter. That's how Rabbi Nachman is related to the Baal Shem Tov. Rav Nachman Hordenker, who Rabbi Nachman was named after, Schus Gen Aleinu, he told the following story. I was once traveling on a ship. We ran out of provisions and were without food for several days. Finally, we reached an Arab city where there were no Jews. An Arab took me in and offered me food. I hadn't eaten for several days and quickly washed my hands and said the blessing for bread. I was just about to take a bite when a thought entered my mind. This is from Mishlei. Shlomo Melech says, do not eat the bread of one who has ayin hara, who has a mean eye. Meaning he saw that even though the Arab let him in to eat, he also was looking at him in a way, you could tell when a person's not fond of you. You could see it in their eyes. You could literally see it. There's a fire, there's an aish, there's an anger, there's a vehemence. And he saw it as he's about to eat this bread because he hadn't eaten for several days. You have to eat. But this thought popped into his head, and Rav Nachman was a great tzaddik. And Rav Nachman Hordenker, Rabbi Nachman's grandfather, said, our thoughts are not without meaning. And I didn't know what to do. I'd already said the blessing. right? And we know that as soon as a person makes a bracha for something, he needs to immediately act on what he made the bracha for. So if a person makes a bracha to put on tefillin, he has to put it on immediately. A person makes a bracha for bread, he needs to, before he says anything, sit down and make the blessing on bread and eat it. That there's no disconnect between the blessing and the mitzvah itself. So on the one hand, he had already made the blessing, and therefore it's incumbent upon him to just start eating. But on the other hand, he knows that his thoughts are not without meaning, and this was a very specific pasuk that came up in his head. And he said, I realized the significance of this thought, and I was determined at that moment, I'm not going to eat anything from this person. Just then another thought entered my mind. And this is a pasuk from Melachim. It says, I have commanded the Arabs to feed you. And then Rav Nachman Horadenker said, then I ate. It's an unbelievable maisa. He washes his hands, he hasn't eaten for 3 days, an Arab invites him to his house, he's about to eat the bread, but because he's a huge tzaddik, all of a sudden a pasuk falls into his head. Don't eat the bread of a person who has a mean eye. He's seeing the way he's looking at him. He makes a decision right then and there, since he knows that thoughts are very important. I'm not going to eat this. And then the next second, another pasuk fell into his head. I have made that the Arabs should feed you. And he ate. When Rabbi Nachman told this story about his grandfather, he commented how proper it was for his grandfather to act according to his thought. Each and every thought that entered his mind must have contained some element of truth. The reason he's saying specifically about his grandfather is because Rabbi Nachman explains in many places that there's two main forms of consciousness of a man and a woman. There is the mochin, there's the consciousness, there's the das, there's the mind's eye of a person. And this is a place of true knowing. But then you have what's called the koach medameh, the power of imagination. And this power of imagination is not positive and it's not negative inherently. If the imagination is pure, it's clear, it's pristine, then the imagination can be used to connect to the mind's eye, to know very deep things. Because in truth, the majority of people, we know through the power of our imagination. And therefore, when our power of imagination is not pure, it's not pristine, it's dark, it's bleak, then all of a sudden, the thoughts are dark and bleak. That's where negative thinking comes from. That's where turbulent emotions come from. That's where destructive actions come from. It's coming from impure power of imagination. And Rabbi Nachman said at the end of his life to his students right before he passed away, there's one thing I could say for sure that I gave you. Pure powers of imagination. And this is what Rabbi Nachman offers to any Jew who has the courage and the strength and the humility to receive from such a great tzaddik, to learn his teachings, to follow his advice, even when it goes counterintuitive to what he's learned and what he's seen in his life, and to what others are saying around him. If he just keeps going and he doesn't give up, then his powers of imagination become more pure and more whole and more pristine and more translucent. And then all of a sudden, your God consciousness, your nefesh elokit, your godly soul, begins to shine through your imagination. And you begin to know, like Rabbi Nachman says, through your imagination, what Rabbi Nachman at the end of his life knew through his own das, through his own mind's eye. And so too, he's alluding to the fact that his grandfather had gotten to that point. That when he had thoughts, it wasn't like us. That the thoughts can either be based in truth or it's based on something false because we're still struggling with our imagination. His grandfather had perfected his imagination, and therefore when his thoughts dropped in, he knew it was important. So he's making the point to say that his grandfather, it was a good thing that he listened to his thoughts. But I don't want anybody thinking that because they hear this, now every time a thought pops in their head, it means something real is going on. Because Rabbi Nachman says elsewhere that a person who has not yet rectified his brit completely cannot trust his own thoughts. Because his thoughts are being filtered through his own power of imagination, which is not yet see-through. It's not yet pristine. It's not a pure looking glass yet. And then Rabbi Nachman says the same applies to confusing thoughts that a person has to deal with. A confusing thought may enter your mind, but Rabbi Nachman says if you stand firm, Hashem's going to send another one to encourage you. Similarly, you may imagine even, that you are no longer one of Hashem's children. But if you do your part, Hashem will eventually send you thoughts of encouragement. I literally was begging Hashem in the car, please, I need encouragement. I need some chizuk. I need a hug. I need a kiss today. And I was crying and screaming. And as I pull up my car to my apartment, and I'm thinking about going in the house so that I can find my Sichot Haran and do this next lesson, I'm walking out of my car, and right away I see a construction worker coming out of my apartment building into the truck to leave with a shirt on that says, "Never give up. Never give up." This is what Rabbi Nachman's saying. You're his child. What you need to fight for. You need to scream, you need to cry, you need to beg, like a child with their parent. Don't be so prideful. Don't think that it's beneath you, that you're 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, that you have done so many things that are wrong, that you have made so many mistakes, that you have fallen so many times. Who am I to start crying? Who am I to start screaming? Who am I to start begging? Because Rabbi Nachman says, in truth, all Jews are the children of Hashem. You're his child. And it doesn't matter what position you get at work. It doesn't matter how people treat you. It doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. It doesn't matter what you have done with your life or haven't done with your life. It doesn't matter where you're at right now. There's one thing that always remains the same, that you're his child. And the way that a father who's normal, the way that a father who has love, which is unconditional, gives that to their son or daughter, so too Hashem does for us. And therefore, no matter what you do, if you come back to your Father and you make the case for yourself, whatever it takes, that you need something, and you cry and you beg and you plead, Hashem will give you, because Hashem loves you. Therefore, Rabbi Nachman says you need to pour out your thoughts and troubles before Hashem, just like a child complaining to his father, complaining. I got a text from a student recently who told me, this was a person a couple years ago. He found Rabbi Nachman's teachings through me. He was learning by being in Queens, and now I've left there, but thank God, he's continued the journey. He's in yeshiva now. He's struggling with certain things. And he says, I don't understand. I say thank you for an hour a day. Every day I'm talking to Hashem in Hibodedut, and I'm saying thank you. And I'm so confused, and I'm struggling so much, and I don't love learning what I'm learning, and I don't know if I'm growing or not, but I also don't want to stop, because then I'm gonna look like a joke. Everyone around me sees how much that I changed my life, and like, oh, what was it? I texted him back. I said, you can't just say thank you. Yes, you have to start there, but you can't end there. Or you could end there, but before, like in the middle at least, you need to complain, and you need to scream, and you need to cry for what you want. Scream to Hashem, tell him, I want to love learning. Scream to Hashem, tell him, I'm struggling, I don't know what I'm doing here. I need help. I want this to turn out for the good. I want to be able to go back to my family and show them that this was really a worthwhile investment, that I'm going against and counter culture in 2022. Right before the Mashiach comes, not pashut, not simple. And I'm coming back with jewels, I'm coming back with gold, I'm coming back with silver. You need to beg Hashem for that. And this is, for me, this is a very big challenge for me. When there are different people who are trying to give forth the teachings of Rabbi Nachman for our generation, and obviously there's an art to trying to give people what they need. And for sure, there's a lack of gratitude that we have in our generation. And as a result of that, that's a large part of our suffering. For sure, Rabbi Nachman says that gratitude is Olam Haba. It's all true, but we're not in Olam Haba yet. And Rabbi Nachman says that Olam Hazeh is more like Gehenna. It's more like hell. So there's a time for this and there's a time for that. And it's very important that you get Rabbi Nachman's teachings as he said them. And Rabbi Nachman gave us permission to make chidushim in his Torah. But you can't come and say that this is all there is to do, is to say thank you. Because I could show you 5 Torahs in Likutei Moharan that say not like that. And I could show you Sichos in Sichot Haran that are not like that. And I could show you halachas in Likutei Halachot that are not like that. And these are not mine. This is Rabbi Nachman and this is Rav Natan saying not like that. And the path that Rabbi Nachman gives us is very difficult. It's very challenging. You're like a lone soldier in an intense war, fighting for the truth, striving for something more real in your life, something more beautiful, something deeper, something real. And a lot of that means being quiet in the face of adversity with others, something that we have not done before yet. But if at the same time you're doing that and you're not in your private time with Hashem screaming to Hashem, you're going to lose your mind. And Hashem doesn't want that. Hashem wants that you're thankful, but Hashem also wants that you're His child. And even if a child is thankful, he never stops crying for something he wants. And even if a child is respectful, he will not stop banging the door until you give him what he wants. And this, Rabbi Nachman says, is how we need to be with Hashem. We need to be like this. So Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow night is Rosh Chodesh Adar, second one, Bet. We're coming into the time of Purim, the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu on the 7th. And Moshe is teaching us, Rabbeinu is teaching us, how did Purim take place? Because Esther, whose name means hidden, concealed, Mordechai was telling her, you have to say you're a Jew. Go to the king and say, I'm a Jew. And all this is a mashal for something much deeper. Go to Hashem and say, I'm a Jew. I'm your daughter. I'm your son. And that brings the Geula, that brings the redemption. And all of a sudden Esther gets everybody together and they pray and they cry and they scream for 3 straight days. And what looks like it's going to be the first Holocaust ends up being the greatest salvation, Yeshua, in history in some ways. A redemption of epic proportions that we're still deriving life force and chizuk and joy and excitement till this day, to the extent that Yom HaKippur, which is considered the holiest day, the Zohar says is Yom Kippurim. It's like Purim. Purim's holier. And even though we received the Torah originally from Har Sinai in a state of awe, on Purim we received it from love. And the main way that we were able to do that is twofold. That Esther had the courage to knock on the door of the king and say, I'm a Jew, and I'm proud, and you need to save me, and you need to save my children. You need to save my brothers and sisters in arms. And she also took all the Jewish people, and they cried and they screamed to Hashem like children, not like businessmen, not like employees, not like servants, like children. And Hashem looked down and had rachamim on them, and everything flipped in one moment. One moment, everything flipped. And Rabbi Nachman says this is the greatness of Hashem. The greatness of Hashem lies in the fact that in one moment, all of the miniyot of your life, all the challenges in your life, all the difficulties of your life, if you don't give up, if you scream and cry to Hashem like a child, He will flip those miniyot into ne'imot. It's going to become bliss. The obstacles are going to become ecstasy, the source of pride and joy for the rest of eternity for you. And what looked like Mordechai, the tzaddik of the generation, was going to be killed and hung, and the Jewish people were going to be exterminated. In one moment, because the Jewish people cried to Hashem like children, everything flipped, and Haman was hung, and Mordechai became the leader of the generation, and Esther became the queen, and the Jewish people took back Hashem with love. And this is the redemption. This is the geula that we're all waiting for. Be'ezrat Hashem, that we should see this mamish b'merav yameinu soon in our days. Thank you for being there to listen to these classes. I hope they give you encouragement and hope and joy. I love you all. Thank you.